good evening. I'll just wait for more of you to join in. And today, our central discussion would be to come and arrive at a good synthesis for a task essay. Okay. What we'll do today is this is the framework which we usually use: thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. Now, there are two kind of questions. One of the kinds are the proverb questions, jahan pe you clearly have a proverb which asserts one side, and then you have to think through that, and then you have to assert the antithesis as well, and then somehow find a way to resolve the conflict, resolve the tension, and bring them to a synthesis. I am checking more and more copies as I am checking more and more copies of the people who are veteran rankers or veteran test takers or even freshers. I find that ye kaam to you're able to do properly, but this is where you are struggling with. So today's session is going to be all about how do you synthesize better. Okay, and I'm going to give you some frameworks. I'll give you some examples so that from the PYQ analysis that you would have done in your home, and those of you who are part of the Smash essay ecosystem, you would be able to plug in kahan pe kya ja raha hai. So things will be practical, uh, tangible, and implementable, as we say. So one thing which I hope all of you have done is that you have access to this micro theme. Okay, the reason why this is important is because what we've done is we've divided all the essay questions which have come from 2021 to 2025 till date into tensions, and I'm giving you just the top 5 tensions: force versus influence, discovery versus creation, intuition versus logic, action versus inaction, process versus goal. And these tensions are similar to your ethical dilemmas, if I can say so, in the sense that both of them in their own context will appear right, and that is the reason why there is a tension. Okay, in their own context force is right, in its own context influence is right, depends upon what's your larger goal, what's your larger mission. Okay, same for discovery versus creation, intuition versus logic, and so on and so forth. Okay, and if you if you have a relook at these essay topics: hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, poets are the acknowledged legislature of the world, you will see that ye themes kahin na kahin yahan pe pull apart kare. And in the examples that you write in your essay paper, as you write your thesis or antithesis, you will find these things actually happening in history. For example, Akbar was a great ruler, had two mentors of sorts. One was Bairam Khan, who used to advise him or influence him directly with the force that can be seen and felt, and then Mahamanga, who used to be on the sidelines or behind the scenes, kind of hand that rocked the cradle wala funda, and she had another kind of influence on him. Now it's both for the ruler Akbar to decide kitna weightage kisko dena hai, because he wants to achieve a certain aim, and it's also for these mentors to know and to decide what kind of role do they want to portray and in which space of life. So your essay will only become better if you're able to think in tensions and solve with tasks. I will assume, and as you join me and as we go forward, keep writing in the examples, because today I'll only talk in principles. Okay, and I will assume that T and A is done for. Thesis and antithesis ho gaya hai. So I will not quiz you on thesis and antithesis. That I'll directly give you. We will talk directly on the kind of synthesis that you need to think about. Usse pehle, this is the paper. I mean, just to give you guys a sense of how important it is to do your essays right, this is the paper from the Jammu and Kashmir state PC's exam. And as you can see, every state PC's exam has kind of improved upon their bar or on the rigor of the essay questions that you're asking. These might be simpler than UPSC, but in no way they are theoretical. In no way they are thematic or only thematic. Every state exam is now getting on the reflection and analytics part. Okay? Reflect deeply and then write your answers analytically well. Sare question: hunger and hypocrisy, can privilege truly understand poverty? It's a massive reflection theme. If you guys know, there's a recent book by Mano Joseph, Why Poor Don't Kill Us. If you can have a copy, read through it, and in a very satirical take, but very deep satirical take, you'll understand what this really means. Utopian dreams and dystopian outcomes. There's a classic line in philosophy which says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay, you might have utopian dreams and you might have theories and and literature written from the past on which you will bank on making those utopian dreams come true. But if you're not aware of your current status, your current societal conditions, etc., it might result in a wild west kind of an outcome. Okay, so you see that this is thesis and antithesis combined. Now they have not fleshed out the sentences properly, but these essays, make no mistakes, are very very philosophical, which should give you guys a reckoning कि अगर essays, those of you who's going to write 2026 का paper, अगर अभी तक essay start नहीं किया है ना, chances are that you're already late. So start today. Like take this week, write a good essay, go to the letter and spread community on Telegram. You will find me there. Fill up the Google form, upload one of your essay. I give one free reading of your essay. And if you want to improve further, you join me up in the Smash Essay course. That said, let's quickly jump onto the first kind of synthesis. Now, just to make things easy for you, thesis, like I said, thesis and antithesis are true in their own parts. There is a major synthesis which is of the partition kind, which will solve for like close to 60% of your essays in the task framework can be solved with this kind of synthesis, which is basically this. इसका screenshot लेना है तो ले लो. I won't be able to share the deck, but here is what happens. Let's take an example, so I'll come back to this. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. Okay, it's an actual PYQ. While you're watching this video on live, and those of you who are going to attempt the paper, give me examples what comes to your mind. Okay, raw example, you don't have to think hard. But let's say the question here is, if I have to test the character of a person, और अगर यहाँ पे adversity है और अगर यहाँ पे power है, which is the better test? Okay, what tests better? So that statement is, I think, given by Abraham Lincoln. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. You will find that if you are a decently thinking individual, both of them will test your character in some way or the other, right? So aisa nahi hai one is wrong and one is right. This is not a binary debate. The only question then, and you can give examples and justify both of them, right? People who are there on YouTube live, and if you're writing 26, give me examples on both sides, and just like keywords also works. The more you'll interact with this live, the more it will be better for you. Okay, because otherwise I'll just tell you the theory and I'll be off. अब ऐसा नहीं होता कि so thesis is like this: hard times reveal who you are. When money, health, or safety is taken away, your pretense kind of drops, and then struggle is the classic test of character. Okay, this is like the thesis. The antithesis would be, but adversity is like a supervised exam. Hard times, okay? Saying hard times won't alone tell me who you are, because if you're fallen under hard times, you know everyone is either watching you or you're down in the dungeons, right? So when you're down, people are watching. There are rules which bind you because you've fallen from the grace, and you have no room to misbehave anyway, right? The part of the character which it tells you about is endurance. Can you survive, or will you just buckle down under pressure? So under adversity, the test of character is only about endurance, not about other choices that you can make, right? This is a deep point now. Thesis is that, yes, it's true. When you are down and out, when there is nothing for you to do, then what happens, how you perform, when all the illusions are gone, that tells me about your character. But the antithesis would be, nahi, it doesn't. And then you can write a few lines about how power actually tests. Okay? So thesis and antithesis can both be argued. And if you guys have read better, if you have decent anecdotes, you will be able to fill in examples of both. But ab batao, iska actual synthesis kya hai? And I'll give you the hint. This synthesis is basically about where adversity tests the character and where power ka test becomes. So there's a border. Okay, this synthesis is basically here. There's a partition. Both are true, but there's a partition, and there are different things which each of these X and Y does. That border is what you have to figure out and fine tune. And how do you draw the border? In one case, it's the order. There's a sequence to things. And now both are true, but in a certain sequence. They say justice and charity. There was a PYQ about justice and charity, that a society which is just doesn't need charity, something to that account. And the synthesis is that there's an order to things. Unless and until your justice ecosystem is properly well built and is time tested, you need charity. So charity bhi chahiye, justice bhi chahiye, for a society which is wholesome, and then there is an interplay of them, vagera vagera, and you have to do this mindfully. You have to you kind of ensure that your virtues are in the proper places, so that arrogance and ego trips, don't become a commonplace thing. But take a moment, all of you guys, and tell me what is the sequence of adversity and power. बताओ adversity क्या टेस्ट करता है कैरेक्टर में and power क्या टेस्ट करता है कैरेक्टर में, because that is what going to tell you कि तुमने कितना समझा है इसको. If you want hints, there is a first exam and there is a second exam. Think of it, adversity is like the first exam and then power is the second exam. Tell me what part of character does adversity test and what part of character does power test? Okay, strength of character, someone said, but what strength? Don't try to be very specific, because the more specific you can be, the better essay you will write. And it's easier than, think of the modern day politics. People who are in power, when you have to judge their character, what do you see? Like, how do you rate them, and on what grounds do you rate them? Someone said power can still show compassion. Yeah. So it's only when you have power, when no one can question you, when no one can stand up against you, that's where you show a real part of your character. How good are you as a leader. Okay. Someone said adversity, suffering strips away comfort. And force to reveal what they value when survival itself is at stake. Yeah, interesting. Adversity not only talks about your endurance, but also talks about what values will you hold. Adversity, you can talk about kings who fell off the grace, or kingdoms who went to ruin, or a country which was subjugated, but still some people said not today. It was an adverse movement, but they showed the strength of their character, that they would rather die or rather be whatever, rather have all the misfortune than surrender, right? So adversity talks about certain parts of a character, which most of you guys would figure out. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, character is tested not in comfort but in adversity, as Freud would. True. Now tell me, what does power test in your character? Take a moment. And which of this exam, and mind you, a good synthesis is not about both test a character. No, it's about which tests a deeper part of your character. A good synthesis, a mature synthesis, something which is fitting for an aspiring bureaucrat. So is in this case, you will decide the order. There's a sequence to things, which is the reason why, by the way, mind you, that lot of freedom fighters and lot of states which were colonized and countries which were colonized before, when they didn't have the right character, when the leaders didn't have the right character, when they got independent, the leaders became dictator, right? Like, so that's a cue for you. Okay, Ayushi says character is independent of adversity as well as power. That is true, but the question is, what shows, or what's the test? Will adversity tell me who you are better, or will, if I give you power, that will tell me who you are better? Like, which, and in which sequence will they tell? What we're doing? We're trying to make you guys specific, because आप ऐसे कुछ भी लिख सकते हो and you would feel that you've written something in the exam and you might not get marks. Only when you're specific, when there is a method to madness of your exam or if your essay, will you get good marks. So be under no mistake for that. Okay. Adversity test perseverance. Can one be hopeful? Okay, true. Everyone is writing good about adversity. Tell me, how do you test a person's character when power is given? Look around what's happening in the modern day. I gave you a hint already. I gave you an example already. People turn into dictators when they have all the powers, and before that power struggle, they were talking all about amazing, utopian dreams and whatnot, right? So power is like an even stronger test of your character. what do you, and whenever you have to think about these things, think in extremes. Okay, so like you guys can think in extremes when you think about adversity, it's easy. But think in extremes when you have absolute power. Think of Trump. Think of Indian politicians, absolute power. What, think of the amount of restraint a leader needs to have when he has absolute power, when you're bubbling with like energy and confidence, and I can do whatever I want. If you can have restraint, then if you can have all those virtues where you can align with the common man, or the superior goal or the larger vision, you'll have to have a lot of restraint. So if you have restraint as a character trait, it'll only come when I give you power, right? And you have so many examples even in mythology. Can you think of examples from mythology where power, absolute power, is given to a certain person, and he goes nuts or she goes nuts? Right, Karthik? You're good. Power reveals a person. Okay, give me examples here so that you guys know it better. Power acts as a mirror to character, amplifying what is already there within. Yeah, that's a better. So now, see, that's a specific line, and it's a great analogy. One of the biggest addition, Karthik, are you writing in 2026? Let me know here. One of the biggest advantage as an essay writer is if you can use the power of analogies to prove your point better. Okay, think of like how you make a paragraph. So let's say you figured out a thesis. आपका paragraph क्या होगा? Which is broadly what a argument would look like. It will be an assertion, then it will be a mechanism or the logic, and then there will be example. Correct? In the mechanism or the logic, you can either tell me a factual mechanism, this happens, then that happens, then cause and effect, whatever, or you can give me an analogy, like the one Karthik gave here, that power acts as a mirror to the character. It amplifies what was already there within you. Adversity ये नहीं करता है. Power does this, you know, this much better. Okay. Power's the ability to enforce my will, and by knowing that, only as Hobbes would say, we are selfish. Yeah, selfish, short, and brutish, wield for our gains. But Ram Mandela proved the other way. Right, right, great, awesome. So you know that people, and the best example that you can have in this, because this is like a one-line synthesis, by the way. I'll just now give it to you. Adversity tests what you can bear. Power tests what you allow yourself to do. Okay, power is the later and deeper exam. The perfect example in these cases are people who've been once subjugated and then they were free. Nelson Mandela, Ram. So across history, you will find such examples. Nelson Mandela का एक antithesis भी है. एक और बंदा, I think the leader of Zimbabwe, if I'm not wrong, he completely turned dictatorial. Okay, after the independence. So you have such deeper contrast to write in an essay, which will test whether you're able to apply this synthesis. ये समझ में आया? Synthesis type is partition, which basically means that thesis and antithesis are both true, but there is a boundary, there is a demarcation. And why, this makes sense, because all of you will have different boundaries here, right? So scientific thinking का एक बहुत important rule होता है that whatever theory I propose, it should have a set of falsifiable conditions. If I am not giving you the falsifiable conditions of my hypothesis or my theory, then that's not science. That just bungle up stuff, right? A lot of these blind faith and nonsense, which we keep hearing, because you cannot falsify them. Under no conditions can they be falsified, right? So a lot of these jumle baji which politicians do, or which some of our religious leaders do, where they cannot back it up with any logic, is a non-falsifiable claim, right? Synthesis is not supposed to be that. Synthesis is supposed to be falsifiable. So when you draw a border, जब आप बोलते हो कि यार नहीं, adversity ये test करता है and power ये test कर सकता है, you and I can differ in the opinion, but because you're also giving me the argument and example, so I will take your case. Am I making sense, everyone? Right, Ayushi, that example also makes sense. Okay, so partition as a synthesis. How do you help drawing the border? One of the thing is order and sequence. I gave you one example, which is justice and charity. I gave you another example, that how do you test a person's character? Is it adversity or is it power? Right. So there's a sequence to think. Power is a much more compelling exam to understand someone's character. इसमें किसी को doubt है यहाँ पे? Does anyone have a different opinion on this? Yes, Karl Popper gave the falsifiability wala theory. True. Oh God. Uh, okay. I mean, this is done. Can someone help? Uh, I think this got jammed. Okay, cool. So we're good with this. Second question. The cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. Now I'm coming to the second synthesis type, which is a threshold. So we're talking only about synthesis today in this live session, and the backdrop of synthesis is that to solve these questions in UPSC essays, which are mostly about tensions, all the questions are relate to one tension or the other. You have to take refuge in the Hegelian dialectic. Okay? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Most of you would be able to write the thesis and antithesis with not much stress. The only problem comes in synthesis, wherein if you're not sure and if you've not practiced enough, you'll end up giving me a very stupid and layman synthesis, which is that both are good, we need to 50-50, a balanced kind of perspective. The reason why that is flawed is because there is no falsifiability in that, right? When you say that both are true or both are right in their own perspective, let's just do both of them, all these things which we listen, there's no falsifiability in that claim. The synthesis that we now do with rigor has falsifiability, and that is why it's compelling, that is why it is analytical. Okay, itna samajh lo. The second kind of synthesis is subsegment is threshold. So the cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. Take a moment and even give me examples for on these theses. So the thesis is that inaction also has hidden cost. Doing nothing feels safe only because the price is invisible, and you will give me examples, some reforms which were delayed, the attempt which was not taken, and the shots not fired. I'm just added rhetoric, but you can give me examples from the time when something was not done and we paid a heavy price later on because we missed the bus. Can you give me some examples like that? From Indian history, from the world history, I'll give you one. The policy of appeasement in the World War II was the cost of doing nothing. The cost of doing nothing, right? Correct. And the antithesis to this would be, but some mistakes cannot be taken back. A wrongful execution, forest when you destroy, or we don't think about much else. A war started on bad intelligence. Here, doing nothing was far cheaper option by far. Okay, I'll tell you more about this, but give me examples on both the cases. This is the classic tension of action versus inaction. Okay, I'll take you back to the sheet. Okay, this remote's not working, but if I could just take you back to the sheet. I'm drawing this from wow, this is going in circles. Forget it. Give me examples for that. Uh, yeah, this is done. Praveen, if you're listening, can you come and see if how this thing holds? ठीक है, इसका बताओ क्या सिंथेसिस हो सकता है? Chamberlain declining to provoke a war. Yes. If intervene could have stopped Mahabharata. Yeah, cool. Draupadi's children. Yes. Any other person? Similar to the ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what the ship is for. Yeah, true. Action versus an action. True. Tell me, what kind of synthesis would you imagine? Common sense se soch ke batao. What kind of synthesis makes sense for this? Dude, this is very bad. किससे होगा? इसकी बैटरी चेंज कर दिया. ये क्या हो गया? So the point in case, and this is what I've taught in the class, that's there. Not all decisions are same. Okay, there are two kinds of decision. Okay, fuck it, छोड़ दे, को नहीं चाहिए. And this is coming from Amazon's Jeff Bezos philosophy. There are two kinds of decision. There are two problems. One is a double door problem, and one is a single door problem. Some of the actions are irreversible. Okay, so you need to deliberate more on them. Some of the actions are reversible, so you have to optimize on your time. So Amazon का philosophy ये है कि most of the problems in life, they look like they are irreversible, but they're actually reversible. So they're like two-door problem. You can go back and forth again and again. But some of the problems are just single door problems. जो issue single door है मतलब खोल दिया and then you cannot return back. There you deliberate more. You take more time. You strategize better. You act less expeditiously. You consult with a lot of people. But the problems which are twin door problem, you act fast. Don't make time a variable between your action and your thinking and execution. That is the threshold. So that's the threshold. So when you have to synthesize, then you have to talk about this. That act fast when errors can be undone and act slow when they cannot be. Now give me examples of places where errors cannot be undone, where we've seen. So Draupadi, Chiriharan, Chamberlain, all the examples that you guys have given are where errors. I mean, I should have acted, but tell me where we've acted in haste, where we should have deliberated more. How does that, Karthik? Global handling of COVID. Okay, give me examples. Timing matters, yes, but give me examples where we should have deliberated more. We should not have acted in haste. Anyone, and you don't have to give me full example. No one? Just to give you more hints, the issue here is the reversibility of your decision. Okay? The cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing, or the ship in the harbor is safe, but that's not what the ship is for, etc., etc. All of these questions make sense. Thesis and antithesis both are true. Remember the partition bar thing? Both are true. Only if you understand issue क्या है, इधर issue reversibility का है. India's passing of farm laws back in. Great Nikova project. We should do more research. Absolutely. I gave you the example, right? Anything which took years to cultivate, mostly all environmental cases will fall under this, which took years and decades and centuries to cultivate. You don't take hasty action on that. And that is why you'll see these kinds of tensions are what judiciary and legislature, they grapple with. Policy making, when you'll grapple with these tensions. There's an instant gratification and there's a long-term consequence. When do you decide which side to err on? Okay. Infrastructure creation on climate sensitive regions. Correct. Great. So if you think like this, then even when you study your daily current affairs, you'll be able to figure out good examples to put in such essay questions, because now you understand the tensions properly, and now you understand how these tensions should be resolved and if it's resolved like that or not. Okay, and then you can debate and discuss on any topic, like the current NEET issue, right? You can discuss both sides. Intellectual brainstorming ही तो करनी है. You can take either sides and then you can synthesize a better way forward. Discussing both sides is not that big a deal, but synthesizing a way forward is a big deal. Okay, cool. We'll move to the next one. Level. The years teach much which the days never know. And this is, I think, last year's question. Tell me, what do you understand by this? Yeah, true. India's peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka. Explain more, Rishabh, if you can. And also, let's come to this. This is the third kind of synthesis, where level. Okay, basically, the two distinct things. Again, and both are true in their own might. So they might be solving for two different things, right? So अगर मैं ये line बोल रहा हूँ, the years teach much which days never know. If I have to just give it to you in simple words, it's like the youth, which is mostly categorized with impatience, etc., doesn't have wisdom. Okay, which sounds true, but that doesn't give me a sense that the youth should not act on impulses or instincts. So now I am in a tension. Where do I decide the fine line between what days or what youth should take control of versus where should I pay heed to what my elders are saying or what wisdom is saying? Right? That's the fine line. That's a tension. Both are true. Are you able to think in this tension? If yes, tell me in the comments. And also now tell me where examples where your day-to-day actions make impact versus example where wisdom or old books or old ways of doing things are more helpful. Let's think through this. That is pretty cool, Karthik. Singapore's rise proves that daily panic over having no natural sources. Even yeah, who else? And in this way, you've kind of done the synthesis also. I mean, I'll arrive at this, but beautiful example. Beautiful example. Reason why recruiters ask for experience. Yeah, okay, but there's a cutoff date to that experience. It's very difficult for people in their 40s to get better jobs now unless they've skilled themselves, because what their experience is basically just one thing done over 10 years, which is not experience, it's just repetition. Okay, again, fine line and nuance. You need to have your hand over these things. UPSC is going to reward you if you can think skillfully, if you can think in nuance and then articulate it better. यूपीएससी छोड़ो, तुम ऐसा अच्छा ऐसे लिखोगे तुम्हें ही मजा आ जाएगा. ठीक है. And so most of you guys who would see very superficial essay attempts, it's only about time that they'll not be given much marks, because UPSC is a subjective paper. The better you write, the better you flesh out, you'll get better marks. This is not like JE, which is a rocket science paper. There's only one right answer. Nahin. Isme the more nuance you can put in your paper, the better you can flesh out thesis, antithesis, and antithesis, and the better you can synthesize things together, resolve the conflict together, the better your command over the essay would be. Give me more examples. Karthik, great. AD, 13F, also great. Other people, and just give me a show of hands. How many of you are writing 2026 ka ye wala means versus how many of you are preparing for the years later? Nothing. Okay, how many of you guys are writing mains in 2026? Okay, awesome. Like quick show of hands. 27. How hard is it, guys, for you to key in something like Japan's disaster management is an expertise developed over years that days only ensure. Okay, so tell me what reflectively tell me, what does youth stand for? Like if wisdom is for the old guy or the elders, what does youth stand for, or what does young age stand for? Young age stands for courage. Young age stands for the stuff that you're seeing at Jantar Mantar. And people can criticize that courage is foolhardy and courage is unfounded, or courage can be misguided, or courage can be misdirected, but doesn't matter. It is courage. Make no mistake, people who are fence sitters, who take a lot of time in just absorbing the thing so that they can come with the most intellectual and wise decision, they lack the balls and they lack the courage, and they couch that lack of grit and what, if in the Durandar movie parlance, the lack of guda, in wisdom, which they also don't have. Okay, because if they've read their history better, if they've gone through the text better, they would know what are the signals wherein you should act. Same thing, action versus inaction wale pe hit karta hai. ठीक है. So for this, the thesis is that wisdom comes slowly. A single day is too small to show a pattern. And this you would agree. I mean, again, both are true. You cannot understand where the stock market is going by looking at every day. There's no pattern in every day, or even in a week's thing. You can only see the pattern when there is a large statistically significant sample, which tells you that if you have to judge someone, give them the larger sample. If you have to judge an event, have a larger statistical sample before you make a hasty judgment. But if you have to act, uh, days are your answer. Okay. So antithesis, but life is only ever lived in days. Every lesson the years claim to teach was built out of ordinary days. Wait for the hindsight and you will postpone living itself. Right? You get it? We people who are on Twitter, Instagram, come what may, there's a name given to us, which is keyboard warriors. We're not acting. We're acting out of hindsight. That's no action. That's just performative revolt or performative action. But people who are acting on days level, they are the people who will basically be called people who maximize on the day, carpe diem and all that jazz, right? So the synthesis would be, ये तो सही है, तो synthesis क्या होगा? Days teach deciding and years teach judging, and you have to balance the both, but both of them have their own value. When I say balance the both, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि get into analysis paralysis. इसका मतलब ये है कि figure out where you have to act, where you have to listen, who you have to act for, who you have to listen from. That's the synthesis for this. So there is a level, okay? There's an altitude. Up to this, it's more like action, 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 and then there's a reflection part of it. Either you do reflection khud se, or you take help of an elder to do the reflection. Fair point, Nidhi. But you cannot use this. You can, in fact, use this Doha in the essay also, but also make sure you write it in English as well. The explanation. Okay, Karthik, yours true wisdom requires living fully in the present while trusting that the time will reveal what today's struggles cannot teach us. Yes, yeah, that's true. That's cool. Okay. And one of the, I mean, I thought I'll give you an example for this, and there's a great diagram for this as well. This is the night, and the reason why I'm giving you this is because there's a great habit in us Indians that we just या तो हम बहुत महिमा मंडन कर देते हैं चीज़ों का, या फिर we just get them down to dungeons. We never, or we rarely ever go deep into things, understand the context as it were, and then put things in the right perspective, right? So a lot of us hail 1991 as the era where India opened its economy, and we kind of liberalize our economy, and hence the amazing economic growth ensued, etc., etc. But we forget the context of what actually was the time, telling in that snapshot of the week and the month where this thing actually happened. So this is what was going on. India had foreign exchange of about 2 weeks, and we kind of airlifted our gold, put it out on the Bank of England, and we took a loan from IMF. Obviously, we accepted some part of their deal, and that's how the compromises that every country has to make, and issues with sovereignty versus economic excellence and well-being, etc., etc. Those are the tensions which even policymakers grapple with. They err on one side or the other. And back in that time, 1991, this is Congress, by the way, there were a faction of Congress which wasn't agreeing to this. Obviously, there was a faction of all the nationalists, which BJP and other parties, which were against this. But there were these three people: Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh, and even Atal Bihari Vajpayee, if my reading is right, who kind of give pushed India towards this because there was no other option. The call of liberalization had been happening for years in the making, but this was when push came to shove. Okay, now nobody knew that day whether this would be good or not. We had read something in the history. These people took a call. Calls can go bad, but somehow it turned out proper. And so now that was a gamble, which was kind of made under the gun. And like I wrote, this is what was happening back then. And so at that day level, courage is what was shown by the leaders. So young ka matlab sirf young in age nahi hai, young in head hota hai, right? So courage was shown by the leaders, but also because they had not much options left. As now we know, okay, what years know the pattern. The 3 decades later, 1991, it reads as the hinge of modern India. Faster growth, the IT industry, and the largest fall in poverty in Indian history. All of these, by the way, are retrospective calls. So the years judged you, and the days gave you an option to show courage, or gave you the gunpoint scenario, and you took the call, right? You have to either balance both, or align the right value of both these things where they lie. Cool. The last synthesis. Abhi tak, am I clear? Am I making sense? Is it going too fast? Because how many of you guys attending the live first? पहली बार सुन रहे हो मुझको YouTube पे? Everyone, Karthik, AD, Sachin, whoever cared to comment on this live, Ruza, Abhijit, is this making sense? Are these synthesis ke framework helping you understand what you already know, but in much more frameworkish, much more implementable way? uh, if yes, tell me, and we'll move to the next one. Okay, cool. So the next is conditions. And the example we take is muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. This came last year as well. Okay. And like I said, thesis and antithesis both will have examples which will be right in their own circumstances, right in their own, court, as it were. Thesis says some problems solve themselves if you stop touching them. Stirred water gets even more muddier. Grief, rumors, market panics often settle on their own. Social media ka halla hulla bhi settles on their own if you do not add more, the proverbial ghee to the fire. So in this case, restraint is a skill. Okay. Antithesis would be, but some water never settles. Injustice, corruption, a festering border dispute, and so on and so forth, they will not settle. If you leave them alone and they don't clear, they will compound, right? So when I teach this kind of essay in the class, I tell you that uh, you need to know if this solution is like mud in water or it's like a colloidal solution. Okay. That needs to be a wisdom that you have. Otherwise, you'll mess it up. And your patience is another name for neglect then. Okay. अब इसमें बताओ, what's the synthesis? You've seen four kinds of synthesis, three kinds of synthesis now. Tell me, what would be your synthesis line here? And think simple. And the answer already lies in this thesis and antithesis liners. Think very simple. Or a better question, let me ask, what decides should you go for stirring the pot or should you leave it alone? This, Karthik, is thesis. Okay, it's not synthesis. Hmm, 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 hmm. The actual keyword here is condition, right? So you need to be aware of, and this is where your knowledge and this is where your experience, by the way, counts. So combine this question with the question you just attempted. If you have years of real experience under your belt, you would know what kind of solution is this. Is this mud in the water or is this poison in the water? Is this going to settle down on its own or is it going to fester? So the thing that we're looking for is active restraint. Your restraint has to be active. On top of that, you should have the wisdom to understand what kind of an issue is this. If you don't have the wisdom, which comes from the experience of the same scenario, then your actions will either be lucky or you'll get it wrong. This making sense? So, in simple words, leave alone what settles on its own, stir what will not. Wisdom is telling mud from poison. You should be able to tell what is what, what's the condition. The synthesis here is condition dependent. Your action or inaction is good or bad depending upon your judgment of the condition. ये समझ में आया? It is similar to Bezos one door, two door problem. Yeah. True. Sometimes wisdom is recognizing when to intervene and when to trust time itself. Also, Nidhi, you're also right that your interests determine our actions, but you'll not bring other variables like selfish interest or not. Okay. मान के चलो that it's in your interest to solve the problem. ठीक है, so then how fast do you act fast or do you act slow? This question, by the way, is also action versus an action. The tension here is action versus an action. So the way we go about essays at CD in my course is that identify the tension. This is action versus an action. Both are true in their own might. Okay, and there's a TAS framework, thesis, antithesis, which will tell you the both example. Now come to the synthesis, and the synthesis is there. You have to draw a border where you will act and where you will not act with an active restraint. And over here you need to understand the conditions of your actions. Okay, judgment calls kaise loge, which will depend upon your experience or wisdom. Okay, so your uh, synthesis paragraph is done, and then the paragraph next to synthesis would be, okay, if you have to arrive at a synthesis and do a good job of your synthesis every time over and over again, then these are the conditions which you as an individual or society or nation needs to have, wisdom and political institutions and institutions with credibility and vagera vagera, so that you can repeat it again and again, and then you end your essay with a quote. That's it. That's all that you need to do. Cool. Now we come to another segment of synthesis. There are times when you will realize that the essay question that has come to you on the paper needs a third variable to solve for it. Meaning that in a question like this, best lessons are learned through bitter experience. This sounds right and it also sounds wrong, but there's a third thing which has to come to the rescue. A third, जिसको अगर हम, if we don't know that, we'll call it wisdom. We'll give it a very generic name, or patience we'll call it, but that's not the case. There's a third element which has to be in the fray, which is the key catalyst, if I can call it, because of which either this happens or it doesn't happen. Okay? So I'll take you through this example and then I'll show you the diagram, which basically means there's an addition to this question that you need to do in the essay paper. So thesis here is pain teaches what comfort cannot. Failure shows you the exact spot where your assumptions kind of gave you false confidence. And comfort, rarely makes you audit yourself. You don't audit yourself much in comfort. Everything is going fine. You'll just go along with the flow. So it's only discomfort which rips off your assumption, which shows you that you probably are wrong. And think of the bitter experience, not a bad experience. Think of the worst kind of experiences. They will just rip you apart. Relationships, jobs, fall of economy, all the bitter, absolute bitter experiences will fundamentally alter your assumptions and disrupt them, make you face reality one on one, and force you to take a call. When that happens, then whatever lessons you learn, if at all you learn, will be the best lessons, not good, the best ones. Can you give me examples of this? Anyone? Any example which comes from the modern time? Anyone who joined in new on this live, if you would like to give me example for the thesis, उससे ही synthesis में आएंगे हम, right? Let's, okay, what about Kargil war and ITC? What's ITC? Okay, if not the thesis, then antithesis. But pain also, right? Antithesis is basically that Hindi का जुमला which people say, कोशिश करने वालों की हार नहीं होती, सीधे मौत होती है. ठीक है? So 80% of the people who suffer adversity will just die, or they'll give up, or they'll buckle down under pressure. So this statement is like a proverb which is not necessarily true. So then what? Then how do you synthesize? Integrated theater commands. Dude, such an even I don't know. I've forgotten what it was. Explain in the group. But tab tak, let me give you guys the reason. The missing ingredient in that proverb is this reflection. If you have bitter experience, but you do not have the capacity to reflect or the opportunity to reflect, uh, well, you will die. Okay, you'll likely have a wound which will fester with time, and not a great. That's like the antithesis. This is why a lot of people just buckle down under pressure. If you have bitter experiences, same kind, but you also have reflection, the capacity to reflect, opportunity to reflect, etc., etc. Best lessons. समझ में आए? These are the cleanest, most awesomest synthesis, and the only thing these syntheses depend upon is your understanding of the mechanism. Reflection is that missing addition in this proverb, which they would assume, which UPSC assumes you will figure out and you will put in there. Okay? All the proverbs which UPSC gives in the exam, uh, check if there is a missing addition. Check if synthesis is like, hey, this is the thing which actually helps. This thesis is true, not in and by itself, but if reflection की capacity here है. We'll do more, but बताओ ये समझ में आया? Do you get this? Okay, so Karthik, you say reflecting itself requires a strength of character. True. Did you just delete it? No. Okay, reflection and the capacity to reflect also requires something which is in you. And now we're going into another debate, which is nature versus nurture. Do you have it in your nature to reflect deeply, or do you need to be nurtured? And if you need to be nurtured, then before the adversity hounds you, enough uh, enough education of this kind has to be given to you, right? And now you make the essay even more beautiful if you can, because now you go deeper. And then someone said wound is where the light enters, which is Rumi's statement, which you say that bitter experiences, I didn't have the power to reflect. I am now infested with a wound. I'm still not dead. Now some mentor comes and helps me reflect, or something inside me unlocks. There is a great line of philosophy, and बहुत सारे शायरों ने भी कहा है कि what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. या फिर जख्म इतना तेज हो जाता है कि वही दवा बन जाती है जख्म की, राइट? सो दैट वूंड गिव्स यू एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू रिफ्लेक्ट back again, and then something inside you transmutes, and then you become a better version of yourself. You can take this essay to any consequence. That's the beauty of UPSC ke reflective essays, by the way. But if you have to just shore it up, uh, you know in a nice packaged way, I would say that leave it be. I can continue the argument with you, but that goes beyond the essay purview. And Karthik, yes, it's a paradox. True. That's the, I would say, the beauty and the conundrum of UPSC essays. They are taken or stretched to a certain point, they become paradoxes. That if I don't have the power to reflect, becomes a wound. Now I become even a better person. So if जो इस बंदे ने reflect किया है, that, I mean, I'm just giving you this thing, whole mechanism. Bitter experience happened. You have some kind of reflection key capacity. You reflected. You learned a lesson through it. Okay. Bitter experience happened. You do not have it. You got wound. Okay. Some people in some religion and spiritual tradition call it divine grace of a very harsh kind. So fierce grace is a term they use. Okay. If you've read Kierkegaard, then Kierkegaard said ki truth, don't try to chase the truth, because truth is not something you pick up or you chase. Then truth starts chasing you. If truth starts chasing you, it will disrupt everything in you. That's the fierce grace. It'll give you wounds, it'll annihilate your ego, and then what you discover, you will become a very different person, which would be the best lessons, arguably the absolute lesson. Right? In that way, it's a paradox that you die only to find your true yourself. We can go here. If you do have a good command of English and philosophy, your essays will earn you more than 160. But if you do not, then you'll just end up patching these with like some isne ye bola usne wo bola. So try to have just a simple thesis, antithesis, synthesis ka line. Okay, but if you're very very good, I mean, why not go and have a field day on that paper? एक और, uh, forest precedes civilization and desert follow them. This is this is largely a thematic essay, but let's just do this. What is the missing thing here? Tell me. Good, greed. Yeah. Okay. Think more technical, I would say. Think environment. This is a thematic essay. To think environmentally, something on that account. Everyone who's answered abhi tak continue to do that. That you guys, if you answer, you'll make a session much better. Otherwise, I could have just recorded this and put it on YouTube. ग्रीड के अलावा और क्या होता है यार? What's the thesis? क्या है कि this is bound to happen, nature is a precondition, every civilization was born on fertile land and forest wealth, Indus on river वगैरह वगैरह. ठीक है, this is too true. Antithesis, you are assuming that as I consume the natural resources to grow, it is by default almost a teleological truism that this thing will get screwed and eventually the civilization will collapse and so the deserts will follow. That's the thing. What you are missing then is this keyword. If you're extracting from the forest and there's no concept of regeneration, there's no concept of living with the nature, giving back, whatever, then yes, you surely are screwed. Right? But if, and you have so many examples in India, abroad, it's in cultures and community which have figured the regeneration mechanism, then the continuity stays, right? You can see this. So the missing synthesis, the missing addition to do the good synthesis is regeneration. We'll move fast to the next one. And by the way, this is the one line synthesis. ये last question है. So I'll let's do as much brainstorming as these last 13-14 kids. You guys are here on this. ये बताओ, visionary decision making happens at the intersection of intuition and logic. Now this is a 2023 question. Some of the questions which you get in UPSC are already synthesized. So there is no thesis, antithesis अलग से which you have to figure out. It's a synthesized statement, pre-synthesized. जैसे वो तवा होता है ना आयरन का, pre-seasoned तवा, वैसे ये pre-synthesized है. अब इसमें क्या है? Intersection, this word is already giving you the clue. It's addition, right? Addition of intuition and logic. You got it right. Like visionary decision making is basically intuition plus logic. Now you just have to prove the case. How would you prove the case? Take those cases, take the thesis, show me the gaps if only logic is there. Take the antithesis, show me the gaps if only intuition is there. Combine both of them, give me an amazing synthesis and example for that, right? These are called deep dives, synthesis deep dives, or thematic deep dives, as we call it. But follow this chart. Intuition minus the logic is a hunch. It's unverifiable, but you can get lucky. Okay. Logic, which is the audit or the frameworks or a proven theory or a proven formula, or your logic ka matlab old knowledge, verifiable ways of doing things, minus the intuition is like a spreadsheet or like a factory setting. So that society, that culture will never grow beyond, but it will probably sustain as long as the macro variables stay the same. As long as your conditions, your variables stay the same, this will work. It's like Newtonian logic works as long as you are in this space-time continuum. The moment you go into quantum field, logic goes for a toss, and now because you also don't have intuition or creative faculty to rethink, you're up for grabs. You're gone. Okay? But intuition, the leap, and logic, the audit, makes a vision that survives or that ushers into a new era. Give me examples for this if you can. Puttaswamy verdict used intuition to declare privacy as a fundamental right to dignity and logic to create a strict rule. Wow, that's great. And in fact, much better legal judgments you can think of. Tell me the one when we legalized homosexuality. What was the intuition? And intuition ko tum normally intuition mat lo, but think of um, a poetic flair or someone who went beyond the normal societal morality, went beyond the curve, went beyond the the normal flow of things. और बताओ यार this. So your job has to be coming up with good examples to prove these things. Okay, so you think of, if you were to write like whatever, like 400 words on this. This is the assertion. Try to play with the essays. This is the assertion, this is the mechanism, and now will come your example. Your example has to be like something which has more gravitas. Like the Puttaswamy verdict is good. Karthik, great stuff. Where do you plan to write the exam, Karthik? 27, 28, or is this just for fun? The vision of Viksit Bharat by 2047 will only come true. Eco growth is logic and intuition to work on social security. No, this is far fetched, Sachin. Intuition to work on social security and nahi yaar, not really. Abhi, we'll just end this in 5 minutes, huh? But stay here. Give me examples from history if you can. I don't think I have slides after this. Yeah. Okay, we'll end at this. You give me examples. I'll drop the link to my channel, which most of you should have. I won't be able to drop a link, but I run a Telegram community aside from, you know, running programs at CD as well. Letter and spirit ko dhoondna. Whoever is writing 26 ka mains and you've attempted an essay, please trust me, you need to write these things. All of this is amazing as part of the theory, but unless and until you put them into practice, put these kind of synthesis into practice and make them your default muscle memory, it will not help unless until you do that. And I want you guys to write superior essays so that you crack the 150 barrier with these. ठीक है, इससे beyond कुछ नहीं है essays में. And honest to God, whatever material you see out there in the ORN space or digital space is at least, I don't even know what ratio, but at least this by 5. Itna substandard material hai. People have only recently graduated from pestle approach to the Hegelian dialectic. Think intentions is just blatantly copied by people who don't even understand what it is to go and reflect deeply. So you will find institutions like Vision IAS and few more, not worthy of naming, but they've just picked up these things and made it into their notes. Don't read those stupid anecdotes. They will not serve you. Think in tensions for yourself. Download the microtheme PDF. What I'm going to do now, and I'm slightly lazy in terms of writing that, but because now I'm pushed, these are the things that I'll put in the X Factor notes, which will be available to everyone, regardless of whether you're part of my course or not. But as you go through, as you navigate through daily news, right, try to see what tensions are being navigated by policymakers, by economists, by social sector folks, by administrators. Which side are they erring on and why? If you would be there, what side would you choose? As you read philosophy more and more, see what kind of philosophical tint Aristotle is giving and why. Understand the context of Aristotle, Plato, Heidegger, जिसको भी पढ़ते हो, जो भी पढ़ रहे हो तुम, ठीक है, see where they're coming from, which is the reason why they're erring on one side, and they're resolving the tension in this way. Is it holding true? If not, a next philosopher which comes, he'll kind of, flip the thesis, give the antithesis. Read these things so that not only you have a better reflective angle at things, but also you have enough ammo, enough knowledge, enough information, जिससे कि तुम्हारा ऐसे elevate हो जाए next level पे. Okay, that's all. I hope this session was useful. This session squarely was on synthesis. If you're new to this channel, go to the lives that I've done before, which is on tensions, which is on micro themes, which is on arguments, and how you should make them. And if you're in Delhi, come see us in the office, especially for the answer writing part. We don't do the foundation course, but we do damn good job of answer writing. Have a good night and take care. We'll probably see you again.